What do you think of the nuclear state now? Both the treaties that are being talked about out of Washington, the drive to bring nuclear power into America, a renaissance for it. What is your sense of this now?
Well, the danger of a nuclear confrontation between superpowers is essentially nil. For example, the US and Soviet Union. It makes you wonder why we still have, 1,500 nuclear warheads deployed on either side, something like that, even with the new theory that are on not hair trigger launch, but within minutes launch. Many of us who have looked at this issue for a long time are very concerned that Obama did not include that in this new treaty with Russia to take those missiles off of rapid launch. Because the danger of accident, and if you actually look through the history, there have been many near accidents, is not zero. So the danger now is the proliferation of nuclear materials to, quote, rogue states, to terrorists. And many people are working actively on that. But I'm also concerned about the proliferation of nuclear power for several reasons. One is we still don't have a place to put the high-level radioactive waste. And, you know, scientists have been looking at this for decades. And now Yucca Mountain is out, so these materials are being stored, as I understand it, right next to the power plants. There are talks about bringing back plutonium to do, to put them in, what are the reactors called?
Breeder reactors. Yes.
Yeah, breeder reactors to use the plutonium. Major concerns about that. So the amount of materials and the know-how by proliferating nuclear power just expands, both in terms of the materials themselves and in the geographical spread and the number of people who have access to them. And so I have some real concerns about that. At the same time, let me give the positive side, like the title of your book, The Good News about Climate Change. The good news is that as we speak, one of the largest collections of world leaders are talking about what to do about the proliferation of nuclear materials and trying to stop nuclear proliferation. There's some real positive action on the part of China to maybe actually sign on to some sanctions about Iran, may be able to control that development. So it's much better than it was. When we started IPPNW, there were 50,000 warheads pointed at each other. And the relationships between our countries was horrendous and scary. And if you watch that film about McNamara, for example, and what happened with the Cuban Missile Crisis, it's terrifying to realize how close we were to a nuclear war. What got me into this issue was how many steps was it to the Mallinckrodt Hall, the chemistry building where I was taking physical chemistry with George Kistiakowsky. Now, George Kistiakowsky was the science advisor to Eisenhower and remained a science advisor to President Kennedy and was the head of the explosives division at the Manhattan Project, knew more about nuclear weapons than almost anyone. And as a sophomore here, in the middle of the Cuban Missile Crisis, Kistiakowsky, for any of you who knew him, was this tall, handsome, very arrogant man who set off explosions in various parts of the lecture hall when he saw people falling asleep. He was an explosives expert. He could control it from the desk. It was pretty amazing. So he was someone who was remained nonplussed by everything, but in the middle of the Cuban Missile Crisis, his face was white as a sheet, and he was stammering. And he said to the class, we were all sitting there, I remember it like yesterday, I cannot lecture this morning. I'm terrified, and walked out. And all of us thought there was going to be a nuclear war. And when you watch that McNamara film, you realize how close they came. So I'm feeling much better about it, but we still have to keep the genie in the bottle.